Hi, my name's Jeff Little. I'm pro staff for Hoghead Baits, and I'm going to cover a couple different lures today, some of which I've had a hand in developing. The first one here is the hog slop tubes. This one, I actually pour a lot of my own soft plastics, and with experimenting with different colors, I've come up with this one. This is called, the color of this one, it's called River Bottom. I've taken a lot of underwater photography of crayfish, hellgrammites, mad toms, anything that a smallmouth bass here on the Susquehanna River would want to eat. This one is one that I came up with, and it's basically a brown that, with black fleck, different colors of black fleck, and when that sits on the bottom, it really blends in, just like crayfish. Crayfish, that's their job. They need to blend in with the bottom of the river. So we call this river bottom. The reason I like hoghead tubes over others is that they're really soft, but they're also very durable. They hold up very well for the type of rigging that I like to do, which is with an extra wide gap hook, weedless rigging of a tube. To do this rigging, you start out with a egg sinker. This one's a 1/4 ounce egg sinker. And if the tentacles let me, I can shove that up in there. There we go. All I'm doing is shoving that up towards the top. I stop short of the top. I don't put it all the way up there. That's so when it's rigged on there, that bait, that real soft bait, can collapse on the hook and get out of the way of that hook so we can stick the fish. All right, so you got the weight in there. Next you put the hoghead bait's glass rattle. That makes a nice sound, helps the smallmouth find the bait when the water's muddy. Okay, so I've shoved that up in there. I also take, this is worm glue, or you can use, I rig these at home with crazy glue. And I'll just put some of that up in there to keep that rattle from sliding out. Now it's secure, okay? The last thing I do is I add a little bit of scent. As long as the scent is amino acid based, it's a good scent. Amino acids are the building blocks of protein, and that's what the smallmouth wants to taste when it picks up something that he thinks is a crayfish. All right, I'm shoving that in there. Little bit will do. Work it in there. Now, when you put the tube on the hook, it's important that it's on there straight. And I'll explain why in a minute. You go straight in the nose, right on the top, in the nose, out through the chin. All right, and you slide that up, and you just turn that sucker around there. Now, this part is important. You want that hook to come straight across. You don't want it too low because it'll bunch up and turn to the side, and you don't want it too high because it'll stretch it out and give it a funny shape. You want it on there straight. Because if you don't have it on there straight, and every bait is going to do this, every bait that you rig on a worm hook or extra wide gap hook, as you bring it back, it's going to spiral as it comes. The more off center on that hook it is, the more it's going to spiral. And that spiral, when you bring it back in, is going to twist up your line. One thing that I teach my kayak fishing students as a good habit with tubes and with other soft plastics, some of which I'll cover later, is to leave about the length of the rod hanging off and let the tube just hang and see which way it spins. That one wanted to spin a little bit to the right or your left. I'm just going to continue to spin it in that direction. That counters the line twist that's already on the reel. Okay? So every 5 or 6 casts, do yourself a favor. Unspin your tubes. Another one of my favorite baits that Hoghead Baits makes is called a jerk shad. It's like a Zoom Super Fluke or a Bass Assassin or Sluggo. I like this one because it's a much deeper bodied bait. More closely resembles a lot of the panfish in the rivers, the red breast sunfish. Sometimes we have shad in the rivers that are deeper bodied. Again, I'm trying to rig these as straight as possible. Now I'll show you, if you rig the bait and it's got a kink like that, you see how it's curved just a little bit? Do it over, because any deviation from straight on that hook is going to cause that corkscrew on the way back. We already know how to prevent that from causing a bird's nest on your reel. But the best way is just to rig it straight. Now, the other great thing about the jerk shad is its action. I do a lot of dead sticking baits, meaning that you just throw them out there and you let them sit. This bait has a unique shape. It's got shoulders. Let me cut that and I'll show you what I mean. You look at it, it's like a T, and what that does is when that bait drops, it gives a little shimmy as it drops. If you've ever fished with live bait, fished with minnows, you know if you've had one on there too long and it doesn't look that lively, you pitch it in the water, what's the first thing it does before the biggest bass you've ever seen engulfs it? It does the little death quiver. And that's what this does on the fall. It just, as it's dropping, it does that little bit of shimmy on the way down. Most of my pickups on this are once it's already hit the bottom. That's dead sticking. The right rod and reel setup for dead sticking is based on the size of the bait, but one thing that I always like to do whether I'm dead sticking something like that or the jerk shad, is to use yellow braided line. This line, it's a lot like what fly fishermen do in terms of it'll float on the surface, and that line, when it's laying out there and it starts taking off, you know you have a fish. So it's visual strike detection, as opposed to if you're fishing a tube, you can feel it. So braided line with a fluorocarbon, very clear fluorocarbon leader, it's a great way to dead stick a Hoghead Baits jerk shad.